Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Brad. I'm one of the pastors here at Copper Hills, and I'm glad to welcome you this day. Welcome to folks that are joining us online, streaming live, or later this week. Happy 4th of July. That's it. We live in this fantastic country, by the way, right? We do. So, happy 4th. You may not know this or not, but I've been traveling a little bit the last 6 weeks or so. I'm glad to be home. One of the trips that Pastor Paul and I took was to Ireland. And total transparency and honesty, it was a golf trip. It was. Now, to make it holy and to sanctify it a little bit, we added 3 or 4 days to the front end to visit a church in Limerick, Ireland, to be with the pastor, to encourage him, to see what was happening there. Ireland is an incredibly religious country where likely less than 2% of the population would say they know and love Jesus and follow him as an apprentice of his. Now let that sink in a little bit. Like, that is a phenomenal statistic. And here is a young family that have been working at starting a new church in that city with the hope that they could share the love of Christ with people. And people are coming to know him. And it's wonderful to watch that. So I tell you that in a way just to justify the golf trip. So it was an amazing experience. And the reason I do that, this is kind of an introduction to the next talk in this series we've been doing of Jesus the Storyteller. I want to tell you another one of his really interesting and confounding stories that, sometimes we read them and they look on the surface that we get it. And then you realize, look, that was written 2,000 years ago in a part of the world that's different than ours, in a season, an era of human history that's different than ours. And how do we make sense of that? And so we're going to look at one of his stories today that is kind of like that. And hopefully we can apply it to our world and our life. So back to golf for just a second. One of the golf courses that we visited, we actually golfed 7 courses in 7 days. These are some of the oldest, most beautiful courses in the whole wide world. And it was so cool to be part of it. And so just to kind of stir the sin of envy in you, this is one of the courses we visited. Like, wow, right? Every one of the 18 holes is either right on the coast or you can see the water from where you're at. It's Old Head. And it was just an amazing, wonderful experience. The day that we were there, it's blowing like 30 miles an hour because it blows all the time, right? And I'm at the first tee. This is me at the first tee, just over 400 yards. It's kind of the 12th most difficult hole on the whole course, and it's pretty straight out. I just have to get it in the fairway, right? And so I have to admit, I'm lined up ready to go, and I'm nervous. Because at best, some of you have golfed with me, I'm overstating my golf game here. I'm like a barely average golfer. I actually don't know where the ball's going most times when I hit it, right? And so there are 12 other golfers or so standing around and some caddies and whatnot. And like, this is just an incredible golf course. Some of the finest golfers in the world have golfed. And I'm nervous, right? I'm not at all confident I can get the ball into the fairway. And so I'm just saying, I'm praying that, God, I just don't want to embarrass myself, right? So I tee up. And you want to duck. We're not exactly sure where this is going to go, right? Just like as I'm standing on that tee, we're not sure where it's going to go, right? And then something happens. This has never happened in human history before. It defies all scientific theory and knowledge. I hit the ball and it went almost just vertically, straight up into the wind, circled back and landed just kind of in front of me. Like that. Yep, that's it, right there, right? And at that point, I don't know what to do. Like, the tee box just goes silent because everybody's embarrassed for me, right? And I'm not sure at this point whether I should laugh, should blame the wind, just put my clubs back in the bag and go home. I'm just not sure what to do. And then somebody who loves me shouted from the group of 12 golfers and said, just take a mulligan and do it over again. Now, you non-golfers have no idea what a mulligan is. Like you think it's kind of like an Irish dessert or something like that, right? No, it's actually a thing in golf. It means that you get a do-over without penalty. It means you can put the ball back on the tee without taking a penalty stroke, and it's like your first stroke. It's like it never happened. It's never going to show up in the scorecard. It's a mulligan. I wanted to take a mulligan. I really did. I was embarrassed, and I wanted to do this over again. And so I did. And this time, I know what you're thinking. This time, it's right in the fairway, and I'm relieved, right? I can just get off the tee and go. But as I'm walking to my ball, I have this thought. First of all, leave the first ball where it is. It's just a memorial to scientific phenomena. Just leave it right there and go to your other ball. And I've got a little ways to walk now, and I'm thinking, man, I didn't want to do that, and I'm so grateful for the mulligan because it all just didn't count. And then I got to thinking, there are times in my life where I wish I had gotten a mulligan for something that happened in life. Sometimes they're the littlest things. A police officer stops you for speeding, and you long for him to come to your car window and go, hey, saw you were speeding, just want to wish you a great day. That's a mulligan. Never hear about it again. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Or you mess up a presentation at work, and you go, I wish I could have a do-over on that. And your boss comes to you and goes, hey, that's a mulligan. Let's just do it again. You'll get it right this time. I know you will. And then there are way more serious things that happen from time to time. There's the time you raise your voice at your children. There's a time that you didn't pay attention to your spouse, or those kinds of things. And it creates some conflict in the home and disappointment. And you just I wish my kid would come to me and go, hey, Dad, that's a mulligan. Don't worry about it. Not a problem. Or your spouse would come and go, hey, happens. Forget about it. It's not on the scorecard. Never think about it again. And then actually there are eras in our lives, like whole seasons, where we look back on those things and we go, oh man, I know a mulligan's not possible. But oh my goodness, if it was, that's what I would want. Put something in our mouths, in our bodies, watch something that we promised we would never do again. And then we did it again. Or a marriage that blew up. And when we stood at that altar, we promised that just fidelity and it'll never happen. And then it happened. And we know a mulligan can't happen, but if someone could just come along and go, hey, not on the record. It's all taken care of. Don't worry about it. That's a mulligan. Why do I tell you all that? Well, because Jesus tells a story at some point, one of his really short parables, and we're going to look at it today. It's just 3 lines. It's a really short parable. And it tells a bit of a story and it asks a question. But it has everything to do with mulligans. It has to do with a couple of guys that got a mulligan for some indiscretion they'd done. Here's the story. It's from Luke chapter 7. It says 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and another 50. Just give you a bit of backdrop here. This a single denarii would have been what a Roman foot soldier would have earned for the day. So both these guys are kind of in the same financial place, it looks like. One of them owes about 2 months, it looks like, of salary, and the other over a year and a half. Here's the thing, neither one of them had the money to pay the moneylender back. So he decided to take them to court and sue them. So he decided to spike their interest. He sent them a demand note. No, unexpectedly, he just comes to them and goes, okay, so that's a mulligan, guys. It's not on the record. It's all forgiven, taken care of. Don't ever have to think about it again. You're off the hook. We'll never talk about it again. It's amazing, isn't it? What a twist of story that is. Wouldn't that be great? And then, in Jesus' little story, he asks this question of somebody who's listening into the story. He says, now which one of them loved the moneylender more? And we might look at it and go, I think I know the answer to that. Wouldn't it be like 2 guys, same place, one owes a whole bunch, one a little, both forgiven? The one that owes more would probably feel more gratitude, right? Right? Would you agree with that? Yeah, that's logic. That's how we think like forgiveness works, right? That the more you're forgiven, the more that you are appreciative and grateful for it. So why does Jesus tell this story? Because it happens in the context of a dinner party that we need to know about, because what brackets it is an incredible story, and it's going to help make sense of this parable. So here is the story. From the earlier part of Luke 7, we read this, and starting in verse 36, it says, when one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he, that's Jesus, went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. All doesn't make sense here. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. And then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she's a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. And here's the story. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them would love him more, Simon? And Simon gives the answer that we all give. I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. And Jesus agrees. You have judged correctly. Then he turned to the woman and he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house and you did not give me any water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, Simon, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. So, what's the deal with that, right? Well, there are 3 people in this story. They kind of all converge in Simon's home. There's Simon, of course. We are introduced to him as a Pharisee, and we may not know exactly what that means, but it was kind of a political sect, if you will, within the Jewish nation. It had developed a couple of hundred years before we read about him here. Here's what was happening in Israel at that time. They were once again under the domination of a foreign nation, and they're tired of this, and they want to get out from underneath it, and they look to their religious leaders, the priests of the day, for some help. And the priests have kind of taken a more kind of liberal view of life, if you will. They've kind of connected with the leaders of the country that's overseeing them, and they've kind of gone soft, if you will, in terms of relationships with them. They've taken the law of Moses and they've not emphasized it and they've not enforcing it, if you will. And the people of the nation are upset with that. And so kind of a grassroots movement within the nation develops, and it becomes a crusade where they go, no, we need to get back to the law of Moses. We need to get that straight. We need to obey it. We need to adhere to it because we're under subjugation because we've not been obedient to it. And so let's get the whole country obeying the law, and God will bless us once again. And so they begin to do that rather forcibly, and the priests lose their power. The Pharisees, who the word really means come alongside the law, that's what they were doing, come to power, and it kind of sweeps the nation, and they become people in authority. And as happens oftentimes, power, you've heard this, power corrupts absolutely, and they find they can control people with laws. And so they add laws. They have 613 of them altogether. And this is Simon. He's a law keeper. He's going to keep the law, and this is who he is. And then this really uncomfortable thing happens where this woman arrives, and she's not really supposed to be there. And we're going to see in the story why she's not supposed to be there. So that's Simon. That's his worldview. That's where he's at. Jesus is in the room. And Jesus, as much as Simon is a law keeper, Jesus has a reputation as being a lawbreaker. And it upsets people. It ticks people off. And yet they can't quite figure it out, as Simon can't figure it out. He does things that only a prophet could do. He does things that God does, like he raises dead people, makes blind people see, puts limbs back together. I can't quite figure it out. because he doesn't act like someone I would expect to act. I'm a little confused by the whole thing, but I'm also interested. So I'm going to invite him for dinner. And this is what he does. And, of course, we know there's a woman in the group. And we don't know her name. All we know is her label, which Simon is sure happy to give her the label because to him, she's an object, not a person. And it's interesting to me, Dr. Luke, who writes this eyewitness account, calls her a sinner. And I don't know about you, but that's not typically the title I use to refer to people as, at least not in their presence. And this is what she is. So why is she that? Well, if you go back over some text of Scripture, you realize that oftentimes when a woman is referred to as this, it's not all the time certain, but typically she is known to the city as someone of a certain profession. And in all likelihood, she is a prostitute. Though clearly, to be true to Scripture, that's not definitive, but that's the general thought with it. And she's known as that. And that was an extremely immoral place to be and to be that person. And that's why Simon, understandably, kind of objectifies her and just doesn't call her name, doesn't ask her name, just says she's the sinner. And so she's in this place at this dinner meeting with Jesus. But she shouldn't be there. Because the thought generally would be, and the law of the Jews suggested this, that if you were in the presence of someone, touched by someone physically who was that person, you actually took on that sin yourself. And that's why it was really uncomfortable for her to be there. She was not accepted. I don't know why exactly. I'm reminded of Mary Bruner when I think of that, not because of the immoral character, because that wasn't Mary's story, but I was reminded of Mary Bruner throughout this week. Now, Mary Bruner, you need to know, was a fellow student of mine in middle school. And Mary had cooties. You know what cooties are, right? It's this mysterious germ that pervades the human body and turns the person into somebody who's just to be avoided, slovenly and not clean, and you just don't want to be close to them because apparently cooties are also contagious. You might get it if you get too close to her. And Mary had cooties. These were Mary's cooties. She seemed to wear the same dirty, torn clothes every single day. And she must have lived close to a campfire someplace because she smelled like smoke all the time. And she had a face potted with pimples, and her hair was straggly and dirty. And rumor has it, don't know if it's true or not, but rumor had it that her and her mom lived in a car in our little town. And Mary was to be avoided, and she was. She was ridiculed. I'm, of course, way too good to do that, but I think I thought it. And because of that, because Mary had cooties, she sat in the back far corner of every classroom, away from people. And she would eat her lunch on the far corner of the athletic field. And I remember one day, it really bothered me. And I tried to talk to Mary, and she was afraid of me and didn't trust me for sure. And so she just kind of ran away. And then Mary was in our school for a couple of months, I think it was, and then never saw Mary Bruner again. Because Mary had cooties, she was unacceptable, right? Now, was there something wrong with Mary? No. But she was unacceptable because of what she looked like. And then rumors started of who she was. And this is what's happening at this dinner party. Simon has invited Jesus, who's an interesting figure, a public figure, which wasn't uncommon. Give you a little bit of context of what physically is going on. This is a picture of what might have been like Simon's home. It was a little larger than the average Jewish home. And the architecture was designed around a central room. For you and me, our central room is oftentimes the family room or living room. And then we have this open concept where there are no walls, right? In this setting, the whole house was built around a dining room. because food fellowship was really a big part of the Jewish culture. And so it wasn't uncommon for a guy like Simon to announce that somebody of some influence was coming for dinner, and the whole community would be invited. He would leave his front gate open, and people could come in. They couldn't sit at the table, but they could sit around or stand around the perimeter of the room so that they could hear the debate and the discussion and the things that were being talked about and learn from it. And it would make Simon look really good because he could hold his own in these debates, and it was about his own personal influence. And so Jesus has developed this kind of following, and Simon invites him for dinner. And evidently this woman finds out about this, and she joins and stands around the perimeter. Well, everybody else kind of sits at a table. Now, here's a picture of what it may have looked like. In this case, it's a short table, and everybody's sitting on cushions with their feet kind of out behind them or beside them, leaning on one elbow, and they're having a debate and a discussion over food. And as they eat, they talk and so on. And so as we're told in the story, this woman must have known Jesus. She must have known something about him. Maybe she was in the crowd one day when Jesus was teaching. Maybe he had a personal contact with her that we don't know about. Maybe she was a friend of a friend and showed up at a place where Jesus, we just don't know. But somehow she knew him, and we think that for two reasons. One is she didn't just stand anywhere around the circle, she stood right behind him. That appears to be intentional. And what adds to that is she brought a alabaster marble jar with her with perfume in it. Now, for her in her trade, that was kind of her calling card, if you will. And there's no explanation why she brings it till we see a little later in the story what's going on. So there she is. Jesus is at the table. Simon is there. And there's this unnamed woman, this sinner, standing behind Jesus. And we don't know what it is, but something triggers her. She starts crying. In fact, she starts weeping, as we're told. And we don't know if she saw one of her former clients, or maybe it was some memory from the past, or maybe it was just being there with Jesus and she remembered the encounter she had with him. We don't know. But she starts to cry, and at some point she notices that her tears are falling on his feet. And I suspect she's just a bit embarrassed by that whole thing, and so all she can think to do is to kneel down, take her hair down, which, by the way, the last time she had done that was a couple of days ago when she had a shower, and then last night when she was with a client, because that's how that worked. And so she begins to dry Jesus' feet with the tears that she's spilled on his feet. And if it wasn't for the tears, that would have been seen as an obscene gesture. And then it becomes obscene. You could argue even erotic. Because now she starts kissing his feet. And then she breaks that alabaster jar open and she pours perfume on his feet. What in all the world is going on? Why would she do that? It's so inappropriate. Does she not have some discretion? Well, evidently not. And Simon notices it. And we know from the story, it's not a good thought for him. You see, Simon has got something going on in his head. There's three people in the story, and he has an opinion about all three of them. He has contempt for the woman because of what she's done. She's wrecking his dinner party. And what she's doing is absolutely contrary to the law. And I'm a law keeper for God's sake. I'm a law keeper. And this is just all kinds of wrong. And she doesn't belong here. And I wish she wasn't here. And I just have contempt for her. I don't see her. You know the question that Jesus asked? Do you see this woman? I think there was more behind Jesus' question than that. I think Simon would have said, what woman? I just see a sinner. I don't see a woman. And this is his opinion. He's filled with contempt for her. And then he's got a complaint about Jesus. His complaint with Jesus is what he's doing, that he's allowing it, that he's permitting it, that he doesn't step in and he doesn't say stop. And he doesn't say that's inappropriate or would you leave now? He doesn't say any of that. Apparently he's okay with the whole thing, and this bothers Simon a great deal. And Simon has one more person that he has an idea about, and that's himself. And Simon is confident that his righteousness and his virtues are superior to her and even to Jesus. And Jesus notices it. And Jesus tells this story to Simon about someone who owes a little bit and someone who owes a lot. And Simon knows which one he is. Which one is he? Guy that owes a little. And obviously the woman is someone who owes a lot. And what Jesus is concerned about is not who owes what, but he is deeply concerned about Simon's inability to experience and express love. Because Simon has a high view of himself. He has a view of his own sinfulness that doesn't match what hers is for sure. And Jesus is off the line because a real prophet wouldn't do that. Simon's the only righteous guy in the room. And Simon doesn't need much forgiveness. He might need some just because, well, he's human. But Jesus notices it, and rather than condemn Simon for his sin, he wants to point out to Simon, because he loves Simon so much, Simon, your own high view and confident view of who you are and your level of virtue is keeping you from experiencing forgiveness. And Simon, when you can't experience forgiveness, you can't give forgiveness. You're going to complain and you're going to condemn. That's what you do when you can't experience your own forgiveness. If you don't think you need it, you can't give it. And Jesus is concerned what Simon is missing out on. Simon's missing out on experiencing the love of Jesus because he doesn't think he needs forgiveness. Jesus finishes the story with the whole idea behind what it is that he's after. And it's a short little sentence. This is what it is. He says this: whoever has been forgiven little actually ends up loving little. And this is what he's concerned for Simon. It's not that Simon is complaining about Jesus. That's just an indicator. It's not even, though it's disturbing, that he condemns this woman. It's that Simon can't experience the love of God fully the way it's designed to be experienced in the kingdom of God. Because Simon thinks, I'm right and righteous and good and virtuous, and I don't need that. And Simon needs it more than anybody in the room because Jesus doesn't need it. This woman's already experienced it. It's Simon that this is directed to. Here's the thing that I have found in my own journey with forgiveness is I think too highly of myself and how little Jesus has had to forgive me compared to how much this person has hurt me and what they need in forgiveness. And then I can't forgive them. And then I complain about them. And then I condemn them. And my soul isn't filled with the love of Jesus because it actually can't fill my soul in that. So I make excuses. I go, well, hold on. They hurt me way more than I've ever hurt anybody else. They should go first. They initiated the thing. They're the ones that started it all. They should go first. Boundaries. What about boundaries? You should have boundaries. And yes, can I say this? There are boundaries of physical proximity. There are no boundaries on forgiveness. That's different. That's different. I don't have the emotional energy to deal with this. Maybe not you, that's me. And then I've discovered that when that's how I approach it, I actually don't want to forgive them. And I can't experience the wonder of God's love because I somehow didn't need so much forgiveness myself. There is a haunting quote from Jesus that has troubled me for a long time. It's around his answer to the question where somebody comes to him one day and says, hey, I've watched how your friends pray. I've watched how you pray. And teach me to pray like that. And you're familiar with it. We call it the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, right? And then he gets to this place. Oh, and my paraphrase. And Father, I would love for you to forgive me the way I forgive other people. So use the standard of forgiveness that I use on other people. Apply that to me. Nobody prays that. Nobody. Because nobody needs that. It's the other person that needs that. But not in Jesus' world. He is pleading with Simon with love and grace because he wants Simon to be filled with his love in his heart, like this woman has. He says, Simon, the problem is you think you've been forgiven little, so you love little, and then you forgive little. Simon, I want you to love much by understanding how much you've been forgiven of, so you can forgive somebody else. This is what Jesus wants for us, to live that life of a forgiver because we've been forgiven. Mulligan givers because we've received so many mulligans ourselves. That's the motive. Is this hard? Oh my goodness. It is hard. It's challenging. But I believe this, that if we'll do some soul searching and have an adult conversation with ourselves, like David has at one point in Psalm 139, he says, search me, O God, know me deep within. See if there's any unrighteousness in me, and then help me walk in a path of righteousness. Here, can I suggest something else? Do you have somebody that needs your forgiveness? Would you forgive them? Like, that doesn't mean go see them necessarily. I mean, that's maybe another step. That doesn't mean make a phone call. That might happen, but that's too soon. I think Jesus would simply say, would you forgive them? And if you struggle, make an inventory of what you've been forgiven of by me. And then watch how I've forgiven, how I flood you with love, how I give you a mulligan, and I nail it to a cross with me so you can give and receive love. Go forgive. And then the rest, see where that goes. But do that for the love of Christ and his love for you. Jesus, this is hard for us because we're people who want to be right. And we don't want to humble ourselves and admit our weakness or how we've contributed, because we feel so vulnerable when we do that. I'll bet they'll just take advantage of that. And we come up with all these ideas in our minds. And it's actually frightening to consider this. But Jesus, if you could do that for this woman in the story who had this public label, and she could be honest and experience the wonder of your goodness, and then just be so lavish with her love, where it just didn't matter how she's perceived. That's attractive, and that's interesting. I thank you for the compassionate way that you deal with Simon, that you so want him to feel and experience and encounter your love. And you don't just tell him, Simon, it's okay, no problem, buddy. But you make this incredible declaration, Simon, when you love much, it's going to be because you realize how much you've been forgiven. And then you'll go forgive others. You'll stop condemning. You'll stop complaining. And you'll do this wonderful thing. You'll give and receive love like I intended. Jesus, help us with that, to believe that's really how you do things. And we'll be grateful for it. Amen.